to be a comprehensive account of everything that we are doing at the, throughout the state, but rather it highlights certain trends that we are seeing in statewide and regional data sets. So the best way to communicate the meaning and context behind data is by showing the data itself. And that's not so much using Excel tables, but preferably something that's visual and intuitive to understand. So for this reason, the Water Quality Status Report features many data visualizations, including charts, maps, and dashboards. All of the data visualizations are interactive, meaning that you can filter the data, you can turn things on and off, and the visualization should respond accordingly. The report was written with a broad audience in mind. When we first envisioned the report, the goal was to reach everyone from water resource managers and staff to the public. And we wanted to communicate our findings in a way that would be understandable and interesting, but not leave out the details completely. Our inspiration for the report includes data journalism stories published by websites like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and ProPublica. These sites have to think about readership, data storytelling, and communicating sometimes complex information to an audience that might not know a lot about the subject. So this report is still a work in progress, but through this report we can explore the use of open data techniques to better inform management decisions and improve our science communication. The focus of the report is on surface waters for now, but our hope is that in future editions we will be able to expand the scope of the report to include other water board data sets, including groundwater and drinking water. This is only our second year producing the report, so there's still a lot of room for growth and improvement. And then finally, the report is a group effort that wouldn't exist without the work of many state and regional water board staff and our partners outside the water boards. It is a collaborative process from creating the visualizations to writing the report. So before I talk about this year's report, I want to quickly go over last year's report, mainly because the structure of the two reports are so different. Those who are familiar with last year's report might recall that we published 7 individual data stories, each organized around a specific theme that our staff and management decided would be an important story to tell about the health of our surface waters. So these 7 stories make up the entirety of the 2017 report, and 3 of those stories are shown on this slide here. So this year's report is similar to the 2017 report in many ways, but the main difference is the report's structure. And so there's only one main data story this year, not 7. And this main data story has multiple chapters, each featuring different topics or case studies. The title of the report is Land to Sea Connectivity, and the structure and the narrative are organized around the theme of watershed from land to sea, looking at how inputs and activities on land can impact all parts of our watersheds. Another difference is that we introduced a theme to this year's report. And so earlier this year, the Water Board's Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program hosted the 3rd annual California Water Board Science Symposium on June 20th and 21st. The official theme of the event was Adapting in the Face of Disruptive Landscape Change. And it featured a range of speakers who presented on topics such as historical ecology, climate change, land use change, cannabis, and proactive water resource monitoring. So we wanted this report to speak to that same theme and those same subject areas. This year, we also paid special attention to new tools and methods being developed across the state to better inform our understanding of water quality or landscape drivers of change. We wanted to highlight these tools and methods because they relate to the symposium, and also because they show the importance of looking at integrated data systems to better inform our regulatory programs and adaptive management efforts. So as I mentioned earlier, this report is very much a collaborative effort. And so earlier this year, we sent out a call asking interested parties to submit data visualizations for this year's report. And the only requirement that we listed was that the data visualization had to align with the theme of the symposium and address at least just one of the subject areas of that theme. Otherwise, participants were free to choose the topic of their visualization as well as the platform and the format. In the end, we received a total of 10 submissions, and those who submitted visualizations are listed here in the order of when the visualization appears in the report. And we were really impressed with the variety of the submissions we received, as well as the different platforms and formats used and the topics covered. I want to thank all of the contributors again for their submissions, because the analyses that they did and the visualizations that they created are really the heart and core of this report. Okay, so with all that being said, I'll open up the actual report now and give you a tour of what it looks like and how it works, and then also share some insights and findings from the report. Okay. So this is what the initial view of the report looks like. We used ArcGIS story maps to create it. And so the content is on the left, and there's like this panel on the right. And as I mentioned earlier, the report is broken up into chapters that are organized around the theme of watershed from land to sea. So you can use this menu on the left to navigate to certain parts of the report or to jump to a specific chapter. I also mentioned earlier that we planned and designed this report around the theme of the Science Symposium. So at the beginning of the report, we introduced 3 icons, which you can see right here. And so these icons indicate, they are used throughout the report, and they indicate whether a data visualization is analyzing long-term disruptors like land use or watershed hydrology changes, or short-term disruptors like fires or floods. This third icon here, these stars, it's also used throughout the report to highlight those data visualizations that feature a new method or tool that is being used or developed. And all of these icons kind of go back to what I mentioned before about aligning the report to the theme of the symposium. So the first chapter of the report is the land chapter, and the chapter begins the story of land-to-sea connectivity by introducing the topic of runoff, the impacts of runoff on wildlife and environment, and how it travels into our waters. And the first case study or side story in this chapter is the Stream Pollution Trends Monitoring Program, or SPOT. And SPOT is a statewide monitoring program under the Water Board's Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program. It collects and analyzes sediment samples to determine long-term trends in sediment toxicity and contaminant concentration statewide. And then it relates these water quality indicators to land use characteristics. So SPOT analyzed data collected from 2008 to 2016 and found that high sediment toxicity is related to high pesticide concentrations. And furthermore, that the data indicated that most pesticide runoff is related to urban land use. So Bryn Phillips, who is the lead of SWOT at the UC Davis Marine Pollution Studies Lab at Granite Canyon, put together a handful of data visualizations, the first of which is this map. So the long-term destructor icon is displayed here just because this visualization looks specifically at land use as a long-term driver of change. And so this, the two maps in this visualization display toxicity and pesticide data side by side and compares the two data sets. So the size of the points is based on percent mortality and also pyrethroid toxicity units. And then the color of the points correspond to land use. So in both maps, the gray points represent monitoring sites in urban watersheds. So you can toggle through this visualization and see year by year how the two data sets match up. And for most of the years, especially starting around 2010, urban watersheds began to see both high mortality rates and high measures of pyrethroid toxic units. And if we continue to scroll down, there are two more data visualizations associated with this case study. There's a chart showing the average statewide concentrations of pesticides, of pyrethroid pesticides, and another chart showing the average statewide concentrations of metals. In both charts, the gray line at the top represents urban watersheds, and both charts support SWOT's findings that most contaminant runoff issues are related to urban land uses. So at the end of each case study, there is a management action section that goes into more detail about how the findings from the analysis are being used to inform management decisions at the water boards and across agencies. It emphasizes data-driven management and the importance of using data to inform our regulatory programs. So a chapter can have multiple case studies or topics. And so another one in the land chapter relates to post-fire monitoring. I'll scroll down to it here. And so this is interesting because in October of last year, there were three destructive wildfires that burned in Napa and Sonoma counties. The Atlas Fire, the Nuns Fire, and the Tubbs Fire together burned more than 100,000 acres. So to measure possible fire-related water quality impacts, both the North Coast Regional Water Board and the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board conducted water quality monitoring after the fire events. I want to demo a dashboard that Rebecca Nordenholt at the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board created for communicating the results of this monitoring to stakeholders. So this dashboard, which I'm showing in full screen mode and which she created in Tableau, it shows what the region sampled for, in this case, chemistry, nutrients, metals, PAHs, and it shows when they monitored, so after 4 storm events, and then the results of that monitoring. It's all interactive, so you can use the menus on the right to filter for a specific station or a sampling event, or you can highlight any exceedances that they measured. And these exceedances are based on evaluation guidelines for the protection of aquatic and human life. And you can scroll over an individual data point for more information about that evaluation. So interestingly and fortunately, the results from the monitoring show that water quality in the region has not been impacted by the fires. The data shows that there was only a small increase in metals and nutrients after the storm events, and less than 2% of the storm samples exceeded chronic toxicity guidelines. Similar results were also observed by the North Coast Regional Water Board. So immediately after the fires, both regional boards enacted best management practices, including sediment and drainage controls, which may have kept the burn materials and pollutants from entering the waterways. So the following chapters in the report continue this theme of watershed from land to sea, and the next chapter being streams, and the one after that being lakes. And so I'm going to skip a lot of great visualizations just because I don't have the time to go through all of them, but I want to encourage you to look through them on your own time. And the streams section in particular highlights a lot of new methods and tools like indices being developed to better inform our understanding of stream health and the complex systems that impact it. So the next chapter that I want to highlight is lakes. And so if you follow the storyline, the water from streams and rivers flow downstream, eventually draining into a lake, reservoir, or some inland water body. And so this chapter looks at what our data sets are telling us about the state of California's lakes. There's one more data visualization that I would like to highlight in this report, and it's located near the end of this chapter. The Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program, which is part of the Water Board's Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program, assesses the impacts of contaminants in fish and shellfish on beneficial uses in California's water bodies. So from 2007 to 2014, the program measured mercury in black bass in 157 lakes statewide. So this map displays the results of that monitoring by showing the most recent mercury concentrations for those lakes and color codes them based on advisory levels established by the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or OIMA. The map was submitted to us by Jay Davis, the program lead of the Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program at the San Francisco Estuary Institute. And the program found that the southeastern corner of the state, in particular, had a high proportion of lakes with low mercury concentrations, the reason for which is currently unknown but may be investigated in future studies. Analysis of the data also revealed that 30% of all the lakes sampled had an average mercury concentration above 0.44 parts per million, which is high enough for OIMA to advise that sensitive populations do not consume fish from those lakes. The data collected by this program is used to inform OIMA's site-specific advisories, which can help people who catch and eat fish from California's lakes reduce their exposure to mercury. So the map is fully interactive. You can click on an individual site to view the data points associated with that site. You can look at trends, if there are any, and also explore other nearby sites for points of comparison. You can also change the contaminant and explore the data set beyond just mercury. So in addition to the map, Jay Davis and SFEI submitted another visualization, a data story, that goes more into depth about the study and their findings. And this is an external link that you can click just for a lot more information about it, including some of their visualizations that they created to communicate their findings from the study. So the final chapter of the Land to Sea narrative is the Ocean and Estuarine Systems chapter. And we just cover briefly kind of where these land-based pollutants end up and the mercury monitoring being done along the California coast. I encourage you to check it out on your own. And then at the very end of the report, there is a section called Dive Deeper. And I just want to highlight this section because it is the access point to the California Open Data Portal, where all of the data sets that were used in this report are published and available for download. So the downloads are organized by the figure number. You can just go ahead and it has a flat files as well as an API access point. So that is the end of the live demo. Let me see if I can find my way back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So that's the end of the live demo and also the end of my presentation. I want to thank everybody for your time and interest in this webinar. I didn't have time to go through everything, but of course I do encourage you to check out the report on your own time. I have on the slide the link to the report. You can access both 2017 and 2018 editions using this one link. I also have my contact information up on the slide in case you want to follow up on anything. And I also want to mention that I worked on coordinating and producing this report along with Nicole Hack, who's a Sea Grant Fellow also in OIMA, or the Office of Information Management and Analysis. And Nicole wasn't able to make it today, but I want to recognize all of the hard work that she put into this report. So her contact information is up there, as well as my own, and feel free to contact either one of us if you have any questions or comments about the report. So thank you again, and I guess we can open it up for questions.
Yeah, we have a few minutes for the questions and answers. So anybody who has questions from the room or from the phone, go ahead and ask.
I don't recall if there was like an immediate large precipitation event soon after the fires in Napa and Sonoma counties. Do you know if we had the advantage, as it were, in timing, that there was time to put in the best management practices to avoid sediment runoff?
Right, that's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. I think that Rebecca Jordanholt, who is at San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board, or Rich Fadness at the West Coast Regional Water Board might have more information. Is there somebody on the phone who wants to speak?
It sounded like it.
Yeah. So they might have more information about that. I do think that in the report, we did link to, I think, either one of the monitoring plans or a fact sheet in which they may have gone into more detail about exactly how they did the timing. But I know it was those 4 storm events, at least for the Region 2, that they followed up on.
Anyway, it's impressive.
I have a question. So this is really awesome, and I can't wait to look at it a little bit more. But it looks like it's centered around actual monitoring programs that have been designed to answer questions. You know, so they pull data from monitoring programs. Is there any thought about in the future arranging this or making some kind of interactive website where if somebody who has a question about water quality, like how are the sediment concentrations in the SWRCB watershed, or what's the current status of that? Is there any thought about making a portal for people to go in there and ask that question and then pull the data that they need to answer that question?
Wow, that would be awesome.
The universe of data.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. That would be something that we love. I'm not sure if we haven't spoken about that specifically for this report. And I think maybe something like that. I could see it, you know, in the form of like a portal or a website, in which case the format of that would be different. But that's definitely, you know, something we would love to do at one point, and if possible, we definitely want to explore that idea.
I mean, I know that there's issues with secondary use of data, you know, but I mean, I think this is pretty information.
I would just add to that too that I think long-term pie in the sky goal with like the performance report would be to have environmental-based outcomes. So right now we're not there yet, but this is just kind of a start of maybe how we could access that data and tell a story way down the road. If we really wanted to say how the water boards are performing, you should be able to say, how is this water body, what's the sediment like? We're not there yet, but almost.
Yeah, almost.
If the open data portal also gets successful, you know, that's where we can get the data from. Any question from the phone? I don't see any from the room. Okay, Michelle, thank you very much for this excellent presentation. Okay, the webinar is adjourned. Thank you all for participating. See you next month.